I found something in the woods last week that I cannot explain, and the more I try to forget it, the more it haunts me. My name is Oliver. I am 24 years old, and I have always considered myself a rational person. I do not believe in ghosts or curses or anything that cannot be explained by science. But what I saw out there in the forest has shaken everything I thought I knew about the world. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in late October. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that bites at your cheeks but feels refreshing after breathing stuffy office air all day. I had taken 3 days off from my job at the insurance company in Seattle, needing a break from the endless paperwork and fluorescent lighting that had been draining my soul for the past year. My plan was simple: drive to the Cascade Mountains, find a quiet hiking trail, and spend some time alone with my thoughts. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like something was watching you from the darkness? Have you ever ignored that feeling because your logical mind told you there was nothing there? If you have experienced anything similar to what I am about to tell you, please share your story in the comments below. I need to know I am not alone in this. The drive from Seattle took about 2 hours. I left the city behind and headed east toward the mountains, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to suburban neighborhoods to rural farmland and finally to dense forest. The highway narrowed as I climbed higher into the mountains, and by the time I reached the Whispering Pines Trail parking area, I was the only car there. I should have taken that as a warning. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October, not exactly peak hiking season, but the complete absence of other vehicles felt strange. The parking lot could hold maybe 15 cars, and there was not a single one besides mine. The trailhead sign stood at the edge of the lot, weathered wood with faded paint that read, Whispering Pines Trail, 6.2 miles, moderate difficulty. I grabbed my backpack from the trunk and checked my supplies. Water bottles, energy bars, first aid kit, flashlight, my phone with a fully charged battery, and a physical map of the trail system. I had learned years ago never to rely solely on GPS in remote areas. Cell service could be unreliable, and getting lost because your phone died was a stupid way to end up on the evening news. The trail started wide and well-maintained, cutting through a corridor of tall pine trees that blocked most of the afternoon sunlight. The ground was covered with a thick carpet of fallen needles that muffled my footsteps. The silence was profound. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, no distant sounds of traffic or civilization. Just the whisper of wind through the pine branches and the soft crunch of needles under my boots. I walked for about 40 minutes, following the trail as it wound deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and closer together, and the light became dimmer. The temperature seemed to drop with each step, and I found myself pulling my jacket tighter around my body. I checked my watch, 3:47 in the afternoon. I had plenty of time before sunset, but something about the deepening shadows made me uneasy. That is when I saw the first one. I rounded a bend in the trail and stopped abruptly. Sitting on a fallen log about 20 feet ahead was a doll. Not a small toy you might expect to see, but a life-sized figure of a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She wore a blue dress with white lace trim, and her blonde hair was arranged in 2 perfect braids. Her skin looked eerily realistic, with rosy cheeks and delicate features that seemed almost alive. What struck me most were her eyes. They were glass, but they had depth and complexity that made them look disturbingly human. They were blue, the color of a clear summer sky, and they seemed to be looking directly at me. I stood there for several seconds trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Who would bring a doll this far into the forest and leave it sitting on a log? It made no sense. The doll was too clean, too perfect. There was no dirt on her dress, no leaves in her hair, no signs of weathering despite being outdoors. I walked closer, keeping my eyes on the doll. As I approached, I noticed more details. The dress had tiny buttons made of what looked like real pearl. The shoes were miniature leather boots with actual laces. The hands had individual fingernails, perfectly shaped and painted with clear polish. This was not some cheap toy from a discount store. This was an expensive, handcrafted doll that someone had put considerable time and money into creating. I reached out to touch it, then hesitated. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. The doll sat too perfectly upright, positioned too deliberately. It was as if someone had placed it there recently, maybe within the last few hours. But I had not seen anyone on the trail, and there were no other cars in the parking lot. I pulled my hand back and took a step away from the doll. That is when I noticed the others. To my right, barely visible through the trees, I saw another figure. This one was standing upright about 30 yards off the trail, partially hidden behind a thick pine trunk. I could see a white dress and dark hair. My heart started beating faster as I turned slowly, scanning the forest around me. There were more of them, many more. Scattered through the trees in a rough circle around my position were at least a dozen dolls. Each one was life-sized, each one positioned differently. Some sat on the ground, some stood against trees, some seemed to be kneeling. All of them faced inward, toward the center of the circle where I now stood. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This was not random. This was intentional. Someone had arranged these dolls in a specific pattern, and I had walked right into the middle of it without noticing. I took several quick steps backward, moving toward the trail. My rational mind was trying to find an explanation. Maybe this was some kind of art installation. Maybe a photographer had set up these dolls for a project and had not retrieved them yet. Maybe it was someone's idea of a prank, trying to creep out hikers who pass through this area. But none of those explanations felt right. The dolls were too realistic, too expensive, too carefully positioned. And there was something about the way they all faced inward that made my skin crawl. It reminded me of predators surrounding prey, waiting for the right moment to strike. I turned back toward the trail and froze. The doll in the blue dress, the one I had first seen sitting on the log, was no longer there. The log was empty. My heart hammered against my ribs. I spun in a circle, scanning the forest frantically. Where had it gone? Had I been mistaken about which log I had seen it on? No, I was certain. It had been sitting right there, in that exact spot, less than 2 minutes ago. Then I saw her. The doll in the blue dress was now standing on the trail itself, about 15 feet ahead of me. She faced in my direction, those glass eyes seeming to lock onto mine. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking I imagined it, that my mind was playing tricks on me, that fear and isolation had made me see things that were not really happening. That is what I tried to tell myself. But I know what I saw. The doll had moved. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the figure in the blue dress. My hands fumbled for my phone in my jacket pocket. I needed to document this, to have proof that I was not losing my mind. I pulled out my phone and raised it to take a picture. The screen was black. I pressed the power button. Nothing happened. I pressed it again, holding it down for several seconds. The phone was completely dead, despite having a full charge just minutes earlier. A sound broke the silence. It was soft at first, barely audible over the whisper of wind through the pines, but it grew louder, clearer. It was a child's voice singing. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The voice came from my left. I turned and saw one of the dolls, a small figure with red hair in a green dress, standing about 20 feet away. Her mouth did not move, but the singing seemed to come from her direction. Then another voice joined in, coming from my right, and another from behind me. Soon, the entire forest was filled with the sound of children singing that old nursery rhyme, the voices overlapping and echoing through the trees until I could not tell which direction any of them were coming from. I ran. I do not remember making the conscious decision to move. My body just reacted, pure survival instinct overriding rational thought. I sprinted down the trail, my boots pounding against the packed earth, branches whipping at my face and arms. The singing grew louder behind me, chasing me through the forest like a physical presence. I ran for what felt like hours but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes. My lungs burned, my legs ached, and sweat poured down my face despite the cold air. I did not look back. I could not look back. All I could think about was getting away from those dolls and those impossible voices. Finally, I had to stop. I bent over, hands on my knees, gasping for breath. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. I forced myself to look behind me, dreading what I might see. The trail was empty. No dolls, no movement, no sound except my own ragged breathing and the whisper of wind through the trees. I straightened up slowly, still watching the trail behind me. Had I actually outrun them? Or had they never been chasing me at all? Maybe I had panicked over nothing, let my imagination run wild, and turned a strange but harmless situation into a nightmare. That is when I realized I had no idea where I was. In my panic, I had run off the main trail at some point. I was standing on what looked like a narrow game trail, barely wide enough for one person, cutting through dense undergrowth. The tall pines had given way to a thick tangle of smaller trees and bushes. I could not see more than 30 feet in any direction. I pulled out my physical map and tried to orient myself, but without knowing exactly where I had left the main trail, the map was useless. I looked at my phone again, hoping it might have miraculously come back to life. Still dead. The light was starting to fade. I checked my watch. 5:23 in the afternoon. I probably had another hour and a half before sunset, maybe less given how thick the forest canopy was above me. I needed to find the main trail and get back to my car before dark. I started walking, following the narrow path in what I hoped was the general direction of the parking lot. The path twisted and turned through the undergrowth, making it impossible to maintain a straight course. Every few minutes, I would stop and listen, hoping to hear traffic or voices or any sign of civilization. But there was only silence. After about 20 minutes of walking, the narrow path opened into a small clearing. The space was roughly circular, maybe 40 feet across, surrounded by thick forest on all sides. The ground was covered with moss and fallen leaves. And in the center of the clearing sat 6 dolls arranged in a circle, all facing inward. I stopped at the edge of the clearing, every muscle in my body tensing. These were different dolls than the ones I had seen before, or at least I thought they were. Different dresses, different hair colors, different poses. But they had the same disturbing realism, the same glass eyes that seemed too alive. I started to back away, planning to find another route around the clearing. But as I took my first step backward, all 6 dolls turned their heads to look at me. I am not exaggerating. I am not misremembering. Their heads moved, rotating smoothly and simultaneously until every single one of those glass-eyed faces was pointed directly at me. Then they stood up. The movement was fluid and graceful, completely unlike the jerky, mechanical motion you might expect from dolls coming to life in a horror movie. They rose to their feet in perfect unison, never breaking eye contact with me. I turned and ran again, crashing through the undergrowth without caring about the noise I was making or the branches tearing at my clothes. Behind me, I could hear footsteps, small footsteps, running through the forest in pursuit. The rational part of my brain had completely shut down. I was operating on pure terror now, my only thought being to get away, to put as much distance as possible between myself and those things. I burst out of the thick undergrowth onto what looked like another trail, wider than the game path I had been following. I did not stop to figure out where I was. I just ran, following the trail as it wound through the forest. The footsteps behind me grew closer. I could hear them clearly now, the patter of small feet on packed earth, running faster than should have been possible for the size of the legs making them. They were gaining on me. Up ahead, I saw a structure through the trees, some kind of building. Hope flared in my chest. Maybe it was a ranger station, maybe it was a shelter, Maybe it was anything that could offer protection from whatever was chasing me. I pushed myself to run faster, ignoring the burning in my lungs and the stabbing pain in my side. The structure grew larger as I approached. It was old, made of weathered wood with a sagging roof and broken windows. An abandoned cabin of some kind, probably dating back decades to when this area had been actively logged. I reached the cabin and grabbed the door handle, praying it would open. The door swung inward with a loud creak, and I stumbled inside, immediately turning to slam it shut behind me. There was no lock, just a simple latch that I threw across the door. It would not stop anyone or anything that really wanted to get in, but it made me feel slightly less vulnerable. I stood with my back against the door, trying to catch my breath and listen for sounds of pursuit. The footsteps had stopped. The forest outside had gone completely silent again. The interior of the cabin was dim, lit only by the fading daylight filtering through the broken windows and gaps in the walls. There was not much inside. A rusty metal cot in one corner, a wooden table with 2 chairs, a stone fireplace filled with old ashes. Layers of dust covered everything, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Clearly, no one had used this place in years. I moved away from the door and walked to one of the windows, carefully peering outside. I could see the trail I had run down, the trees pressing close on both sides. Nothing moved. There was no sign of the dolls or anything else. Maybe I had lost them. Maybe they had given up the chase. Maybe I was safe here, at least for the moment. I turned away from the window and walked to the center of the room, trying to think clearly despite the adrenaline still flooding my system. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out where I was and how to get back to my car. I needed to understand what was happening. That is when I saw them. Sitting on the 2 chairs at the table, as if they had been there all along and I simply had not noticed them in the dim light, were 2 dolls. One wore a yellow dress and had brown hair. The other wore a red dress and had black hair. Both of them were staring directly at me with those glass eyes. My legs turned to water. I stumbled backward, nearly falling, and my back hit the wall beside the fireplace. The dolls did not move. They just sat there watching me. How long had they been there? Had they been in the cabin when I entered? Or had they somehow gotten inside after me? The door had been closed. The windows were too high and too small for something the size of a child to climb through easily. I looked toward the door, calculating whether I could reach it before the dolls moved. But where would I go? If I ran back outside, the others might still be out there waiting. At least in here, I had walls around me. At least I could see what I was dealing with. The doll in the yellow dress tilted its head to one side, as if curious about me. The gesture was so human, so natural, that it made my stomach churn. Then she spoke. "Why are you running from us, Oliver?" Her mouth did not move, but I heard the voice clearly. It was a little girl's voice, sweet and innocent. The use of my name sent ice through my veins. I did not answer. I could not answer. My throat had closed up and my tongue felt thick and useless in my mouth. The doll in the red dress leaned forward slightly. "We just want to play. We have been so lonely out here in the forest. There is no one to play with us anymore." I forced words out. "What are you?" The doll in the yellow dress stood up from her chair. Her movements were smooth and natural, exactly like a real child standing. "We are what remains. We are what was left behind. We have been waiting for so long, and you are the first one who came deep enough to find us." "Left behind by who?" I managed to ask. "By everyone," the doll in the red dress said, also standing now. She moved toward me slowly, her small feet making soft sounds on the dusty wooden floor. "By the families who forgot us. By the children who grew up and stopped believing in us. By the world that moved on and left us here in the darkness." Both dolls were walking toward me now. I pressed myself back against the wall, wishing I could somehow melt into it and disappear. "But you are here now," the doll in the yellow dress said. "You found us. You saw us. And now you can stay with us. You can play with us forever in the forest." "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, I will not." "You do not have a choice," the doll in the red dress said. She was only a few feet away from me now. "Once you see us, really see us, you belong to the forest. You belong to us." I looked desperately around the cabin for something, anything, I could use to defend myself. My eyes landed on the fireplace. The old ashes were scattered around the hearth, and among them I could see pieces of partially burned wood. I lunged for the fireplace, grabbed a heavy chunk of charred wood, and swung it at the approaching dolls. The improvised weapon connected with the doll in the red dress, hitting her shoulder with a solid thunk. She staggered backward, and for a moment I saw cracks appear in the porcelain skin of her face, spreading like a spider web from her eye. The doll in the yellow dress shrieked, an inhuman sound that pierced my eardrums. I did not wait to see what would happen next. I ran for the door, threw the latch open, and burst out of the cabin back into the forest. The light had faded considerably while I had been inside. The sky visible through the canopy above was deep purple, and the shadows between the trees had grown thick and dark. I could barely see 10 feet in front of me. Behind me, more shrieking. Not just two voices now, but many. The entire forest seemed to come alive with the sound of children screaming in rage. I ran blindly through the darkening forest, branches whipping at my face and roots trying to trip my feet. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving, had to get away from those things. A figure appeared directly in front of me. I could not stop in time. I collided with it and we both went down, rolling across the forest floor. I scrambled to my feet, ready to run again, but then I heard a voice. A human voice, deep and male, and definitely not coming from a doll. "Jesus Christ, what the hell is wrong with you?" I looked down. I had knocked over a man, probably in his 50s, wearing hiking gear and holding a flashlight. He was pushing himself up from the ground, looking at me with a mixture of anger and confusion. "I am sorry," I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. "I am sorry I did not see you. I was running from." I trailed off. How could I explain what I had been running from? He would think I was insane. "Running from what?" the man asked, brushing dirt and leaves off his jacket. He shined his flashlight at me and I had to shield my eyes from the bright beam. "You look like you have seen a ghost. Are you all right?" "There are things in the forest," I said, knowing how crazy it sounded. "Dolls. Life-sized dolls that move and talk. They chased me. They said I belonged to them now." The man stared at me for several long seconds. Then he lowered his flashlight and his expression shifted from annoyance to concern. "How long have you been out here?" he asked gently. "I do not know. A few hours, maybe." "Have you eaten anything? Drunk any water?" "I have water, but I have not." I stopped. Was he suggesting I was hallucinating from dehydration or low blood sugar? Maybe he was right. Maybe this whole nightmare had been in my head. "Listen," the man said. "My name is Richard. I am a volunteer with the local search and rescue team. We got a call about a hiker who was overdue to return. That would not happen to be you, would it?" "I do not think so," I said. "I was just planning a day hike. No one is expecting me back until tomorrow." "Well, either way, you should not be out here in the dark. It is too easy to get lost or injured. Why do not you come with me back to the trailhead? We can sort everything out there." I wanted to argue, to tell him we needed to leave immediately because something dangerous was in these woods. But the way he was looking at me, with that careful concern people use around someone they think might be mentally unstable, made me hesitate. If I insisted on my story about living dolls, he might decide I needed medical evaluation rather than just a ride back to my car. "Okay," I said, "thank you. I would appreciate that." Richard pulled out his radio and called in to someone, letting them know he had found a lost hiker and was bringing him out. The radio crackled with static, and a female voice confirmed the message. Then Richard pulled out a proper map and a GPS unit, took a few minutes to establish our exact position, and started leading me through the forest. We walked in silence for a while. Richard kept the pace steady but not too fast, occasionally checking his GPS to make sure we were still heading in the right direction. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. So he finally said, trying to make conversation, "You mentioned something about dolls." "I think I was just getting dehydrated and my imagination ran away with me," I said, sticking to the explanation he had implicitly offered. "It has been a stressful week at work. I probably should not have come out here alone." "Happens more often than you would think," Richard said. "People underestimate how disorienting the forest can be, especially when you are tired or stressed. The mind starts playing tricks. You see shadows and think they are animals. You hear the wind and think it is voices." "Yeah," I said, "that is probably what happened." But I did not believe it. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard. The dolls had been real. They had moved and spoken and chased me through the forest. My rational mind might try to explain it away, might try to find a logical explanation that did not involve the impossible. But I knew the truth. We walked for another 30 minutes before I began to recognize my surroundings. We were back on the main trail, the one I had started on hours earlier. The trail that wound past that fallen log where I had first seen the doll in the blue dress. As we passed that spot, I could not help but look. The log was there in the beam of Richard's flashlight, exactly as I remembered it. But there was no doll sitting on it. No sign that anything unusual had ever happened here. "Almost there," Richard said encouragingly. "Just another quarter mile." The parking lot appeared ahead, illuminated by the security lights that had automatically come on after sunset. My car sat exactly where I had left it, looking perfectly normal and mundane in the artificial light. Two other vehicles were parked nearby, probably belonging to the search and rescue team that had been called out. A woman in her 40s was waiting by the search and rescue truck, wearing the same type of outdoor gear as Richard. She waved as we approached. "This him?" she called out. "Yeah," Richard replied. "Found him about a mile off the main trail. Seems okay, just a little disoriented." The woman walked over and introduced herself as Karen. She asked me some basic questions, checking to make sure I was not injured or suffering from any obvious medical issues. Then she asked if I needed a ride anywhere or if I was capable of driving myself home. "I can drive," I said. "I am fine now, really." Karen gave me a long look, clearly not entirely convinced. "You are sure? It is no problem to give you a ride if you need one." "I am sure, I just want to go home." She nodded slowly. "All right, but do me a favor and stay on the main highways. Get something to eat and drink, and maybe see a doctor tomorrow just to make sure everything is okay." "I will, thank you both for your help." I walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. Richard and Corinne watched from their truck as I buckled my seatbelt and turned on my headlights. I gave them a wave to show I was fine, then pulled out of the parking lot and headed back toward the highway. I drove for about 10 minutes before I felt safe enough to really process what had happened. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart rate was still elevated. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, I half expected to see a small figure sitting in the back seat, watching me with glass eyes. If you have made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. I know how unbelievable it all sounds. Before this happened to me, I would not have believed it either. But I am telling you the truth. Those dolls were real. What happened to me in that forest was real. And if you are someone who enjoys hiking or exploring remote areas, please be careful. If you ever find dolls in the forest, dolls that look too real, too perfect, please do not go closer. Turn around and leave immediately. Do not let your curiosity override your survival instincts. And if you like this story, please hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Share this with anyone who might need to hear this warning. I made it back to Seattle around 10 that night. I parked in my building's garage, rode the elevator up to my apartment, and immediately locked every window and door. I know it sounds paranoid, but after what I had experienced, I was not taking any chances. I tried to sleep but could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those dolls. I heard their voices. I felt the terror of being chased through the darkening forest. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I needed to know if anyone else had experienced something similar. I needed to know if there were other reports of dolls in the forest, other hikers who had been chased by things that should not be alive. What I found made my blood run cold. The Whispering Pines Trail had a history, not a well-known history, not something that appeared in official Park Service documentation, but a history nonetheless. I found references scattered across obscure hiking forums, old blog posts, and local news archives. In 2019, a family of 4 went hiking on the Whispering Pines Trail and never returned. Their car was found in the parking lot 3 days later. Search teams combed the area for weeks but found no trace of them. The official explanation was that they had gotten lost and succumbed to exposure, though their bodies were never recovered. In 2016, a college student went missing on the same trail. She had posted on social media about finding strange dolls in the forest. Her last post, made shortly before her phone lost signal, included a blurry photo that showed what looked like a figure in a white dress standing between trees. She was never seen again. In 2013, 2 hunters reported seeing life-sized dolls arranged in a circle deep in the forest. They photographed the scene and posted about it online, but when other people went looking for the dolls, they found nothing. The hunters refused to ever go back to that area. In 2010, a park ranger reported unusual occurrences on the Whispering Pines Trail. Hikers complaining about feeling watched, about hearing children's voices when no children were present, about seeing figures moving through the trees. The ranger requested that the trail be closed for safety reasons, but his superiors denied the request. 6 months later, the ranger resigned and moved to a different state. The earliest reference I could find was from 2007. A newspaper article about a woman who had been found wandering along the highway near the trailhead, incoherent and severely dehydrated. When she recovered enough to speak, she told doctors about dolls that had chased her through the forest. She was evaluated by psychiatrists who diagnosed her with a stress-induced psychotic episode. She spent 6 months in a psychiatric facility. After being released, she gave one interview to a local newspaper, insisting her experience had been real. She described the dolls in detail, their realistic features, their glass eyes, the way they moved and spoke. She warned people to stay away from the Whispering Pines Trail. 3 weeks later, she disappeared. Her family reported her missing, but the police found no evidence of foul play. She had simply vanished. I sat back from my laptop, feeling sick to my stomach. This had been going on for at least 15 years, maybe longer. People had been encountering these things, these dolls, and some of them had never made it out. How many people had actually disappeared? How many cases had been written off as simple hiking accidents? And why had I survived when others had not? I thought about that question for a long time. Why was I still alive? What had I done differently than the others? The only answer I could come up with was that I had run. I had not tried to understand what the dolls were. I had not tried to communicate with them or help them or figure out what they wanted. The moment I realized something was wrong, I had run, and I had kept running until I found someone else. Maybe that was the key. Maybe the dolls, whatever they really were, fed on curiosity. They wanted people to come closer, to engage with them, to try to solve the mystery of what they were doing in the forest. And once someone committed to that engagement, once they crossed some invisible line, the dolls could claim them. I had come close to crossing that line. When I first saw the doll on the log, I had almost touched it. When I found myself in the circle of dolls, I had almost stayed to try to understand what I was seeing. But some survival instinct I did not even know I had, made me pull back, made me run. The sky was starting to lighten outside my window. It was almost 6 in the morning. I had been awake all night, reading about disappearances and close calls. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I still did not feel safe enough to sleep. I made coffee and stood at my kitchen window, looking out over the city. Seattle looked beautiful in the early morning light, all glass and steel and concrete. Safe. Normal. No dark forests, no mysterious dolls, no impossible things that wanted to claim you forever. I decided I would not go back to the mountains. Not to the Whispering Pines Trail, not to any remote hiking area. From now on, I would stick to city parks, to crowded beaches, to places where there were always other people around. Let others mock me for being afraid of the wilderness. I knew the truth. I knew what was out there, waiting in the deep forest for someone to come along. Waiting for someone curious enough, isolated enough, vulnerable enough to claim. 3 days passed. I went to work, came home, avoided looking at news about missing hikers or unexplained disappearances. I tried to convince myself that I was moving on, that I was putting the experience behind me. But on Saturday morning, I woke up and found a package sitting outside my apartment door. It was a small cardboard box, maybe a foot square, sealed with brown packing tape. There was no return address, no indication of where it had come from or who had sent it. My name and address were printed on a white label in generic computer font. I brought the box inside and set it on my kitchen table. I stood there for several minutes just staring at it. Part of me knew I should not open it. Part of me knew that whatever was inside would not be good. But curiosity won out. It always does. I grabbed a knife from my kitchen drawer and carefully cut through the packing tape. I pulled open the cardboard flaps and looked inside. Wrapped in white tissue paper, cushioned by packing peanuts, was a doll. She was smaller than the ones I had seen in the forest, maybe 18 inches tall. She wore a blue dress with white lace trim. She had blonde hair arranged in 2 perfect braids, and she had glass eyes, the color of a clear summer sky that seemed to look directly up at me from the bottom of the box. My hands started shaking. I took a step back from the table, nearly knocking over my chair. The doll in the box was identical to the first one I had seen in the forest, the one that had been sitting on the log, the one that had moved. A note was tucked into the box beside the doll. I did not want to read it, but I forced myself to pull it out and unfold the single sheet of paper. The note was handwritten in neat, childlike script. It said, "You ran away before we could finish playing. That was not very nice, but we understand. The forest can be scary for someone who does not understand the game. We are giving you another chance. Take our friend home with you, keep her safe. And maybe when you are ready, you will come back to visit us. We will be waiting. We are always waiting. Love, your friends in the forest." I crumpled the note and threw it across the room. I wanted to throw the doll as well, wanted to smash it against the wall and destroy it. But I could not bring myself to touch it. I could not even bring myself to look at it. I backed away from the table until my back hit the wall. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to figure out what to do. I could throw the whole box away, doll and all. I could take it down to the garbage chute and get rid of it. But what if that angered them? What if getting rid of their gift brought them to my door? I called the one person I thought might understand what I was dealing with. Richard, the search and rescue volunteer who had found me in the forest. I still had his number from the card he had given me before we parted ways that night. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello. Richard, this is Oliver. You found me on the Whispering Pines Trail last Tuesday." Silence for a moment. "Oh, right. The hiker who thought he saw dolls. How are you doing? Are you feeling better?" "No, I am not. I received a package this morning. There was a doll inside it, identical to the ones I saw in the forest, and a note." Another pause, longer this time. "What did the note say?" I read it to him word for word. When I finished, Richard let out a long breath. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Do not throw the doll away. do not destroy it. Do not do anything to it at all. Why not? Because they are testing you. They want to see if you will reject their gift. If you do, they will take that as an invitation to come get it back personally. My stomach dropped. You know about them, you know what they are. I know enough, Richard said. I have been volunteering with search and rescue in this area for 12 years. I have seen too many unexplained disappearances on that trail. I have heard too many similar stories from the few people who made it out. The dolls are real, Oliver, and they are dangerous. What do I do? Keep the doll. Put it somewhere in your apartment where you can see it, where it can see you. Treat it respectfully. Do not let it think you are rejecting it. That is insane. You want me to keep this thing in my home. I want you to stay alive. Richard's voice was firm now. The people who tried to get rid of the dolls, who threw them away or destroyed them, they are the ones who disappeared. The only people I have known to survive long term are the ones who accepted the gift and kept it safe. For how long? How long do I have to keep it? I do not know. Some people still have theirs after years. Some reported that the dolls eventually disappeared on their own, and after that they were left alone. But there is no pattern I can identify, no rules I can tell you. I looked at the box on my table, at the small figure wrapped in tissue paper. This is my life now, living with this thing, wondering every day if it is going to come alive or if more of them are going to show up. I am sorry, Richard said quietly. I wish I had better answers for you. All I can tell you is what has kept others safe. Tell me something. Why did you not warn me when you found me that night? Why did you act like I was just hallucinating? Because I did not know if you had been marked yet. If you had seen them but escaped without taking anything, there was a chance they would leave you alone. I did not want to say anything that might draw their attention to you. But now that they have sent you the doll, there is no point in pretending anymore. We talked for another 20 minutes. Richard told me about other cases he knew of, other people who had encountered the dolls and lived to tell about it. Most of them kept quiet about their experiences, afraid that talking about it would somehow make things worse. A few had tried to go public, posting their stories online or talking to news reporters. Those people tended to disappear within weeks. So I should not tell anyone about this, I said. Tell whoever you trust, whoever you think will believe you, but do not make it public. Do not put it on social media or news sites. The dolls do not like attention. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the box. Finally, I forced myself to approach the table. I reached into the box and carefully lifted out the doll. She was lighter than I expected, her body soft like she was made of cloth rather than the hard porcelain of the larger dolls in the forest. The dress was real fabric, carefully stitched with tiny, perfect seams. The hair felt like real human hair, soft and fine between my fingers. I carried her to my living room and set her on the bookshelf, propped against some old textbooks I had kept from college. She sat there looking at me with those glass eyes, her expression neutral and calm. I spent the rest of the day trying to go about my normal routine, but I could not stop glancing at the bookshelf. Every time I looked, the doll was in the same position, unchanged. But I could not shake the feeling that she was watching me, studying me, reporting back to the others somehow about what I was doing. That night I had nightmares. I dreamed I was back in the forest, surrounded by the circle of dolls. But this time I could not run. My legs would not move. I could only stand there as they closed in around me, reaching for me with their small hands, pulling me down to the ground. I woke up at 4 in the morning, drenched in sweat. I immediately looked toward the bookshelf. The doll was still there, still in the same position, but I could have sworn she was sitting slightly closer to the edge of the shelf than she had been when I went to bed. Days turned into weeks. I went to work, came home, tried to live my normal life. The doll remained on the bookshelf, never moving when I could see her, but somehow always seeming to shift position when I was not looking. I would leave for work with her facing left and come home to find her facing right. I would go to bed with her sitting upright and wake to find her lying on her side. I started documenting these changes, taking photos with my phone every morning and every night. The photos confirmed what I suspected. The doll was moving, though I never caught her in the act. I tried talking to friends about what I was going through, being careful to keep the details vague enough that they would not think I had lost my mind. Most of them brushed it off as stress or suggested I see a therapist. One friend, Jessica, took me seriously enough to do some research. She called me one evening with what she had found. "Oliver, I have been looking into this. There are stories about dolls like the one you described going back over 100 years. Different locations, different time periods, but always the same basic pattern. Someone finds dolls in a remote area, the dolls move and speak, and people disappear." "What are they?" I asked. "Nobody knows for sure. The theories range from spirits of dead children to some kind of nature entity to a manifestation of collective human fear. But the consistent element is that they seem to be bound to specific locations, usually deep forests or other isolated places. Can they be stopped? Can they be destroyed?" Jessica was quiet for a moment. "There are stories of people who tried, burning the dolls, smashing them, burying them. None of it worked. The dolls always came back, and the people who tried to destroy them always disappeared shortly afterward. So I am stuck with this thing forever." "Maybe not forever. Some accounts suggest that if you keep the doll safe and treat it respectfully for long enough, it eventually leaves on its own. The theory is that the dolls are looking for something, some kind of acknowledgement or care that they did not receive in life. Once they get what they need from you, they move on." "How long is long enough?" "Could be months, could be years. There is no way to predict it." After that conversation, I made peace with my new reality. The doll was part of my life now, whether I liked it or not. I named her Lily, thinking that giving her a name might help me feel less afraid of her. I dusted the bookshelf around her regularly. I made sure she had a good position where she could see most of the apartment. And slowly, over the course of months, I started to feel less afraid. The nightmares became less frequent. The constant anxiety faded to a background awareness that I learned to live with. Lily became just another part of my apartment, like the furniture or the appliances. Until one night in January, 6 months after I had received the package. I came home from work around 7 in the evening. The apartment was dark, which was normal. I turned on the lights and immediately felt that something was wrong. The air felt different, colder, charged with a strange energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. I looked at the bookshelf. Lily was gone. I searched the entire apartment, checking every room, every closet, every possible place a small doll could have fallen or been moved to. She was nowhere. She had simply vanished. I found a note on my pillow, the same childlike handwriting as before, on the same type of paper. "Thank you for taking care of our friend. You have been kind and patient, and we appreciate that. Lily is back with us now, back in the forest where she belongs. You are free to go wherever you wish. The game is over. You won. Love, your friends in the forest." I sat on my bed holding that note, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that the ordeal was over, that I was free from whatever hold the dolls had on me. But also sadness, because in some strange way I had grown attached to Lily. She had been a constant presence in my life for 6 months, and now she was gone. I called Richard and told him what had happened. He was silent for a long time before responding. "You are lucky," he said finally. "Very lucky. Most people do not get closure like that. Most people either live with the dolls forever or they disappear trying to get rid of them. Whatever you did, however you treated that doll, it was enough. They are letting you go. So I can go back to normal. I can forget this ever happened." "You can try. But Oliver, you need to understand something. You have seen behind the curtain now. You know there are things in this world that should not exist, things that operate by rules we do not understand. That knowledge changes you. You will never look at the world quite the same way again. He was right about that. It has been 3 months since Lily disappeared. I have tried to go back to my normal life, to pretend that nothing happened. But I see things differently now. I notice when something feels wrong in a way I cannot explain. I pay attention to warnings my instincts give me, even when my rational mind says there is nothing to worry about. I have not gone back to the Whispering Pines Trail. I do not think I ever will. But sometimes, late at night when I cannot sleep, I wonder about the other dolls in the forest. I wonder how many of them are out there, waiting in the dark between the trees. I wonder how many people will stumble across them, driven by curiosity to investigate something they should run from. And I wonder if the note was telling the truth when it said the game was over. Because sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear a sound like small footsteps in my hallway. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, something small and quick disappearing around a corner. Sometimes I smell something sweet, like flowers and old fabric, with no explanation for where the scent is coming from. Maybe the dolls are truly gone from my life. Maybe I am free. Or maybe they are just testing me again, seeing if I will panic and run, seeing if I remember the lessons I learned about treating them with respect. Maybe the game is not over at all. Maybe it just changed form, became more subtle, more long-term. I do not know, I cannot know, and that is the worst part. The uncertainty, the constant low-level awareness that something might be watching, something might be waiting for me to make a mistake. But I keep living. I go to work, I see my friends, I try to find moments of happiness and normalcy. Because what else can I do? I cannot let fear control my entire existence. I cannot spend every moment looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, waiting for the dolls to come back. All I can do is remember what happened. Remember the lessons I learned in that forest, and share my story with others, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it will help someone else recognize the danger before they go too close. If you are still reading this, if you have made it all the way to the end, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story, for believing me, or at least for being willing to consider that I might be telling the truth. And please, if you ever find yourself hiking in a remote forest and you see dolls that look too real, too perfect, do not go closer. Do not try to understand what they are doing there. Do not let your curiosity override your survival instincts. Just turn around and walk away. Walk back to your car, drive home, and forget you ever saw them. Because some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some questions should never be asked. And some invitations should never be accepted, no matter how innocent they seem. The forest is patient. The dolls are patient. They have all the time in the world to wait for the next person who makes the mistake of coming too close. Do not let that person be you. Before I finish this story, I want to ask you one more time to hit that like button if this story gave you chills, and subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more true horror stories like this one. Your support means everything and helps me continue sharing these experiences that need to be told. It is late now, almost midnight. I am going to post this story and then try to get some sleep. Tomorrow I have work and life goes on as it always does. But before I go, I need to tell you one last thing. Something I discovered just this evening that has me terrified all over again. I was going through my mail, sorting bills and junk advertisements when I found a small envelope. No return address, no postage, like someone had hand-delivered it to my mailbox. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed the interior of my apartment, my living room, taken from the angle of my bookshelf. I could see my couch, my television, my coffee table, everything exactly as it appears in my daily life. But there was something else in the photograph, something that is not in my apartment now. Standing in the center of my living room, right in front of my couch, were 3 dolls, not small ones like Lily had been. These were the full-sized ones, the ones from the forest. They stood in a row, all facing the camera, all staring directly at whoever had taken the photograph. And on the back of the photograph, in that same childlike handwriting, was a single sentence: "We have more friends who would like to meet you." I checked my apartment. I looked everywhere. There are no dolls here now, but someone or something was in my home. Someone or something took that photograph and left it for me to find. The game is not over. It was never over. They were just waiting, watching, deciding whether I was worthy of the next level, and apparently I am. I do not know what happens now. I do not know if they are coming back or if this is just another test, another way to see how I react to fear and uncertainty. All I know is that I am not safe. I was never safe, and I may never be safe again. If something happens to me, if I disappear or stop posting or cannot be reached, you will know why. You will know what came for me in the night. You will know that the dolls from the Whispering Pines Trail decided they were not done with me after all. And if that happens, please do not go looking for me. Do not try to investigate or solve the mystery of where I went. Just remember my story, share it with others who might need the warning, and stay far away from any remote forest where dolls might be waiting. Because they are always waiting. In the deep places, in the dark spaces between the trees, in the forgotten corners of the wilderness where humans rarely venture. They are waiting for someone curious enough, isolated enough, vulnerable enough to claim. Do not let that someone be you. I have to go now. I hear something outside my apartment door. Soft sounds like small feet walking back and forth in the hallway. The sound has been going on for 5 minutes now, and no one has knocked or called out. Just those footsteps packing back and forth. I am going to look through the peephole. I am going to see what is out there. I know I should not. I know the smart thing would be to ignore it, to stay in my apartment with the door locked and wait for the sounds to go away. But I have to know. I have to see. Maybe that is my fatal flaw. Maybe curiosity is what doomed me from the beginning. What made me stop to look at that first doll on the log instead of just walking past it and continuing my hike. Maybe the dolls choose people like me specifically. People who cannot leave mysteries unsolved, who cannot walk away from questions without trying to find answers. The footsteps have stopped now. The hallway outside my door is completely silent. I am walking to the door. My hand is reaching for the peephole cover. I am looking through the glass. Oh God! There are 12 of them, 12 dolls standing in 2 neat rows in the hallway outside my apartment. They are all looking at my door. They are all looking directly at the peephole, like they know I am watching them, like they have been waiting for me to look. The one in the front row is wearing a blue dress. She has blonde hair in 2 braids. She looks exactly like Lily, except she is full-sized now, as tall as a real 8-year-old child. She is smiling at me. They are all smiling at me. One of them, a doll with red hair and a white dress, is holding a sign. The letters are written in that same childlike handwriting I have seen twice before. The sign says, "Can we come in and play?" My phone just died. The screen went black even though it had 60% battery a minute ago. My laptop is still on, but I do not know how long it will stay that way. I have to make a decision. I have to decide right now whether to open the door or not, whether to let them in or try to keep them out. Richard said to treat them with respect. He said rejection makes things worse. But he also said to keep the doll safe, and now there are 12 of them outside my door, waiting for an answer. What do I do? What am I supposed to do? The doorknob is turning. I did not touch it, but it is turning on its own. The lock is still engaged, but the doorknob is rotating slowly, testing the mechanism. I need to decide right now. I am going to open the door. I have no choice. If they want in badly enough to make the doorknob turn by itself, a locked door will not stop them. Better to open it myself, to show I am willing to cooperate, than to have them break in and see it as rejection. My hand is on the lock. I am turning it. The door is opening. They are all standing there in the hallway, perfectly still, waiting patiently. Up close, they look even more real than they did in the forest. I can see individual eyelashes. I can see the texture of their skin. I can see their chests rising and falling with breaths they should not need to take. Lily steps forward. She is the leader now, I realize. She was always the leader, even when she was small and sitting on my bookshelf. She tilts her head and looks up at me with those glass eyes. "Hello, Oliver," she says, and her lips move naturally as she speaks. "We missed you. Did you miss us?" I do not answer. I cannot answer. My voice is gone, trapped somewhere in my throat behind the fear that has seized every muscle in my body. "We brought friends to meet you," Lily continues. "They have all been wanting to meet the nice man who took such good care of me. Will you invite us in?" This is it. This is the moment where I make the choice that will determine everything that comes next. I can slam the door in their faces and hope it keeps them out long enough for me to escape somehow. Or I can step aside and let them enter, hoping that cooperation will keep me alive. I think about all the people who disappeared over the years. The families, the college students, the hunters, the park rangers. Did they make the same choice I am about to make? Did they let the dolls in, thinking it was the safe option, only to realize too late that they had invited something terrible into their lives? Or did they refuse? Did they run? Did they try to fight, only to discover that resistance made everything worse? I do not know. I cannot know. There is no right answer here, no guidebook for how to handle living dolls that want to be your friends. All I can do is trust my instincts. And my instincts, the same ones that kept me alive in the forest, are telling me to be polite, to be respectful, to treat them like the children they appear to be, not like the monsters I suspect they might actually be. I step aside, I open the door wider, I gesture for them to come in. "Come in," I manage to say, my voice rough and unfamiliar even to my own ears. "You are welcome here." Lily smiles wider. The other dolls smile too, and one by one, in an orderly single-file line, they walk into my apartment. They spread out through my living room, some sitting on my couch, some standing by the windows, some examining my bookshelf and the empty space where Lily used to sit. They move with the natural grace of real children, touching things with careful curiosity, exploring their new environment. Lily stands in front of me, still looking up with those glass eyes. "We are going to be the best of friends, Oliver. We are going to play together forever. Would you like that?" I nod, not trusting myself to speak. "Good," she says. "Then let us start with a game. It is a very simple game. You just have to follow one rule." "What is the rule?" I whisper. "Never try to leave." Lily's smile does not waver, but something in her eyes changes. Something cold and ancient and hungry looks out at me from behind the childish facade. "As long as you stay here with us, as long as you keep us safe and happy, everything will be fine. But if you try to leave, if you try to run away like you did in the forest, the game ends. And you do not want the game to end, Oliver. You really do not." The other dolls have stopped their exploration. They have all turned to look at me now, 11 pairs of glass eyes fixed on me with unwavering attention, waiting to see if I will accept the terms, waiting to see if I will agree to play their game. I look at my laptop, still open on my kitchen table, still connected to the internet, still capable of sending this story out into the world where someone might read it and understand what happened to me. "Okay," I say to Lily, "I will play, I will stay." She claps her hands together with delight. "Wonderful. This is going to be so much fun." I walk slowly to my kitchen table. The dolls watch me but do not interfere. I sit down at my laptop. My fingers hover over the keyboard. This is the last thing I will write. This is my final message to anyone who might be reading. I am posting this story right now, before the dolls decide that having a connection to the outside world violates the rules of their game. If you are reading this, I am still here. I am still in my apartment with 12 dolls who want me to play with them forever. I do not know how long forever means to them. I do not know what happens if I refuse. I do not know if I will survive this. But I need you to know the truth. I need someone out there to understand what happened to me, to remember that I existed, to tell my story if I am never heard from again. My name is Oliver. I am 24 years old. I went hiking on the Whispering Pines Trail on a Tuesday afternoon in October, and I found dolls in the forest. I should have never gone closer. And now they have found me. They have come to my home. They want me to be their friend forever. I am so sorry to everyone I love, to my family, my friends, anyone who cares about what happens to me. I am sorry I cannot explain this in person. I am sorry I cannot say goodbye properly. Please remember my warning. If you ever see dolls in the forest, dolls that look too real and too perfect, run. Do not stop to take pictures. Do not try to understand what they are. Just run as fast and as far as you can. And if you receive a package with a doll inside, if you find a note written in childlike handwriting, do not keep it. I do not care what Richard or anyone else says. Throw it away. Burn it. Get rid of it however you can. Because once you accept their gift, once you bring them into your life, they never truly leave. They are patient, they are clever, and they always get what they want in the end. Lily is walking toward me now. Her smile has not faltered. She reaches out and puts her small hand on my wrist, and her skin feels warm, almost alive. Time to stop writing, she says softly. Time to play. Time to stop writing, she says softly. Time to play. I am clicking submit. I am sending this story out into the world. If you are reading this, it means I succeeded. It means my warning made it through before they stopped me. Please share this. Please warn others. Do not let anyone else make the same mistakes I made. And if I disappear, if Oliver from Seattle is reported missing and never found, remember this story. Remember what happened to me. Remember that sometimes the monsters are real and they wear the faces of innocent children. Goodbye, I hope I will be okay. I hope this is not the end. But if it is, at least someone will know the truth. The laptop screen is starting to flicker. My connection is failing. The dolls are all around me now, circling me like they circled me in the forest. But this time, there is nowhere to run. This time, I have nowhere to go. This is Oliver signing off. If you ever see dolls in the forest, remember my warning. Never go closer. Never.